Hey everyone, today's conversation is not for people who want to stay cozy and comfortable. It's for people who want truth, perspective, and real movement. I'm sitting down with Anne Karber, entrepreneur, author of the Life Hack Playbook, and host of the Let's Get Naked podcast. You guys know I love the title of that podcast. And when I say naked, I mean the kind of honesty that strips away every excuse that you have, every story you've been feeding yourself, each and every layer that's been keeping you stuck. Anne is known for cutting through the surface level self-help stuff that often fails and getting straight to what actually creates change. Emotional intelligence, personal responsibility, and the courage to look at your life without any of those fancy filters. She doesn't deal in theories like so many people do. She talks about her lived experience. She has great perspectives and has conversations that might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but will absolutely move you forward. If you've ever felt burnt out, overwhelmed, or like you're doing all the right things, but still not able to get where you want to go, this is a conversation that will recalibrate that. Anne brings a bold, no BS energy, a great sense of humor, and a level of clarity that challenges you to rise fast. So if you're ready to get real, get metaphorically naked, and actually shift something in your life, this is going to be a fantastic episode. So, Anne, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Tifane, for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah. So let's dig in. What
Yes.
do you feel like when you look at personal responsibility? Where do you notice that a lot of high performing people fall short of looking at the deeper stuff? They stay stuck without realizing it. For example, they have all the things. They have the nice looking spouse, they have the vehicle, they have the boat, they have the house, they have the money in the bank account, but yet you see that there's something that's not matching.
Yeah. I think the biggest piece of that is just kind of a real savage self awareness. I think a lot of people think that they're in touch and that they're self aware, but there's like a real savage, down to the core understanding of who you are and what your goals are and if you're where you want to be in life. And if you're not willing to look at that, then I think you kind of feel disconnected from your life a little bit, because it is like, okay, you've reached all of these goals, you have all of these things, but if you're not at peace or you're not content or you're not really happy at your core level, you have to get savagely self aware about that. And so I think a lot of people think that they have all of the things, all of the boxes checked, and yet they still find themselves in a place where they don't feel fulfilled, right? They haven't found their purpose. And to me, that's kind of where I found myself as well, where it was like I felt like I was a pretty aware person in my life. And until I really got down to the base level of things, I don't think I really had a good handle on it at all, looking back.
Yeah, yeah, I think looking back is always has so much clarity, and we often wish
Hmm.
that we could go back and do it sooner. If I had just done it sooner, if I had just gotten naked sooner, essentially, then
Yeah.
imagine what I
Yeah.
could. I'm curious what the defining moment was for you, because everyone has a different moment when they go, for lack of a better term, "F it, I'm taking it all off. I'm tired of being someone I'm not. I'm tired of ignoring some of these, um, check engine lights that are going off emotionally for me." Okay, so the question was, in your life, what did you find was that defining moment where you just said, "I'm getting naked, like, I'm over it. Things are not working. That emotional check engine light keeps coming on. I feel that something isn't right for me, and I can't keep
Yeah.
doing the same thing that I've done my whole life."
Yeah. I found myself in a place where I was excellent at numbing out with what my numb of choice was, which was alcohol. And also, I was definitely a workaholic. And so I got to this place where I was almost 40. I had had some pretty savage things that happened, recently as I was approaching 40. And I just decided that I needed to go to rehab and figure out some things, because I had checked all the boxes, the boxes that we talk about, where it's like I had the fancy house and the, 2.3 kids and the picket fence and the business and all of these things that made it look like from the outside I really should have been had everything, and on the inside, I was just falling apart. I had, my sister, who is 18 months, apart from me, had passed away very unexpectedly and in a tragic way, and it set me off the rails. So what I already had, a heavy drinking habit, turned into a complete, spiral. I ended up going to rehab right before I turned 40, and it was the best thing that I could have done because they were really able to help me figure out why I was drinking, or at least start pulling that piece of yarn that was hanging off the sweater, so that I could kind of start digging into who I was and what I was about. My individual story is such that I was so far out of touch with my emotions, which I think a lot of people are, just especially with the numbing that we do, and just it's fine, everything's fine, I'm fine. I don't think that that's the case at all. I call BS on that, for everyone, because I think we're prescribed this, here's where happiness will live, and you get there and it's not really there. So for me, those things of, my sister passing and getting sober, it starting me really diving in on who's Anne, what does that look like, and getting in touch with my emotions, because I just had spent decades, with zero emotional intelligence, which I think a lot of people are in that place. I'll maintain that I think a lot of us are in middle school level, EQ, or emotional intelligence level, and it just changes the game entirely when you start leveling up in that way. So those were the pivot points for me that kind of got me on this
Well, I
path.
have so much that I'm thinking about as you're talking, and one of them is it takes incredible bravery to pull on that thread on the sweater because,
Hmm.
again, the whole entire sweater comes undone, right? And what I see most people do is they have their little pair of scissors and they just keep clipping it so that nobody can notice it. Although you know deep down that if you pulled it, that this is going to completely unravel. And then the other part is as far as drug or alcohol consumption, sex, porn, whatever it is that causes you to numb out, that is where I find a lot of people are starting earlier and earlier. I'm not really sure why that is, but a lot of kids, even vaping, right? They're starting very, very early.
Hmm.
And so they're not gaining that skill set of emotional intelligence because that comes from feeling it, lifting the weight, like lifting the weight of those emotions that are quite heavy because we're here in somewhat of a dense universe, right? There's a lot of density here. And in order to live a life of health and happiness and prosperity, we have to be able to transmute that density. But we can't transmute it if we can't feel it, and we can't feel it if we're numbing it. And there are so many different ways people numb it. I see people that they think they're on top because their choice of numbing is working out or being a workaholic. I was married to a man like that, and he just thought he was winning because that's what he was doing. And it just doesn't
Hmm.
seem like people are as interested in taking a look at what you're talking about and taking those steps. For some people, it's rehab. For some people, it's literally just doing a hard reset and saying, hey, I'm not going to do what I've done every single day. I'm going to see. I quit drinking in 2020, and I really enjoyed the discomfort that I felt when I would go out with friends to happy hour because I know enough based on my education that it's about just doing things in a different way and feeling the emotions that I felt. And I thought, wow,
Yes.
this is a trip. Here I am, even sometimes these days I'll ask the bartender for a soda water with pineapple juice and limes, right? And they'll go, and no vodka? Like they call me out at the whole table. And I think, what is
Yeah.
that about? Like, you gotta call me out? You gotta out me for not having alcohol? What is this? No one outs you if you were to say, can I get a soda water and vodka? No one says, and vodka? Nobody says that. Right?
Right.
It's just super
Right.
smooth and they move forward. So, what are we actually doing as a culture to help people see that it's such a beautiful thing to feel your feelings and to be able to have the experience of a GPS system that actually tells you what's going on from deep within through all the layers of
Yeah.
time and space? Sometimes it's not even of this lifetime, right? It's through all the layers of time and space, and you go, where did that come from?
Yeah. It's incredible because it's such an adventure to go on that is way more interesting than anything that you'll find doom scrolling or on TV or any of that. And yet everyone is so afraid of doing that because it's like emotions are messy and they're sticky. And if you don't have the tools to be able to handle them, it looks like a it looks like a bad car wreck at the beginning, you know? But then as you start to get a handle on it and you start to say, okay, where am I feeling this in my body? What is this bringing up for me? What, if your body is screaming at you and saying no, but we've been conditioned and trained to allow things to happen to our bodies and to put ourselves in places to be people pleasing and all of that stuff. It's like, we're not meant to do that. And I'll maintain that all of that stuff that we're doing to ourselves because we're not in touch with our bodies and we're not in touch with our emotions. That's, your body keeps the score for that stuff. That's to me where I think disease comes in. That's where I think cancers come in. Yes, there's obviously other factors to those things, but when you don't speak your truth, when you're not in tune to, where that makes you feel a certain type of way and what it is, when you're not in tune with the fact that your triggers are your work, not someone else that they did something to you, right? That's a savage self-awareness when you realize that your triggers have nothing to do with the other person, and being able to have the tools to work through that stuff. I feel like a freaking ninja in my life because of my elevated emotional intelligence. I can't recommend it to people highly enough. My life has gone like a rocket ship through the roof since pulling on that string and that yarn, and so many people, I love the analogy of you saying they're cutting it off because they don't want people to see it. I think you're absolutely right. But the problem is that's our superpower. Our emotions are our superpower. Vulnerability, that's not a weakness, that's a superpower, right? We've been numbed out and now we numb out even younger because, babies come out of the womb and we issue them an iPad or a phone or we put something in front of them to soothe them. It's like, that's not how it's supposed to be, you guys. That's why we have all of this crazy anxiety and people that are completely disconnected, people that have no idea if you ask them what their goals or what they want out of life, they have no idea because they are so disconnected from themselves. They don't even realize how to care for themselves. And no judgment. I was in the exact same place, but I've found a different way, which is what has me on this path of just sharing it at full volume because I literally feel like I've found the cheat codes to life. And it's all it is just pulling on that string from the sweater and getting real curious about who you are and what your purpose is and what you're here for. Because it's not just this hamster wheel that we find ourselves on with a mediocre day or mediocre life where you're picking your numb of choice, whether it's food or booze or shopping or any of that stuff. It's like, that's not the meaning of life, you guys. And it can be so much better. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you just said. The main body of my work, which started like in junior high, was studying the emotional link. A lot of Louise Hay's books, and obviously that great book, The Body Keeps the Score. For anyone listening that hasn't read that book, fantastic, like staple to read. And what I found is it is so disheartening to me, like sad to my core, when I see someone that's experiencing something. Let's say lung cancer. I had a client once that came to me. He had lung cancer and he had been referred to me. And I said, "Well, let's talk about the grief that you've had in your life because a lot of times they don't understand this concept. So I would rather just go straight to I already know where that emotion lives. Like I know where those emotions live." And he said, "I have no grief in my life." And I go, "Okay." So we'd work together for about 3-4 months, and I finally decided to dig a little bit backwards, and I said, "Tell me about your parents." He's like, "They died when I was really young." I go, "Both of them?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, who raised you?" "My grandparents." "Okay, well, tell me about them." "Well, they also died within like a short amount of time from each other." And I said, "Okay, wait, let's revisit this no grief thing." And he had to chuckle a little bit because he was so detached from the grief that it was manifesting and masticizing in his lungs, and he made a full recovery. And it wasn't a symptom pill, which so many people, and that's what, that's another sad thing is when you see people that have an injury and they're taking pills to not feel the injury. It is absolutely no different than what we're talking about emotionally. You can't take a pill to not feel the emotions because you can numb it out for a bit. There's a shelf life of the pill, right? It'll say, take another one within 3 to 6 hours or whatever the shelf life is. But at the end of the day, you're still housing that emotion that is begging you to listen to the message that it's sending. And it's not a cruel message. It's always a message of love and self-care. And maybe this isn't your tribe. Maybe this isn't supposed to be your forever person. Maybe it's okay for you to stray from whatever vows you took so that you can find the life that most honors you. And I just hear myself all the time saying to people, hey, are you open to taking a look at what these, because there's all these different GPS systems happening at once within the body, physical conditions, right? You see a physical condition and you quite instantly go, oh, that's what's happening in the person. It gives you like this added sense of appreciation for the direction you should go with them as far as helping them get to where they want to go. And a lot of these people, I think, they're starving for knowledge, and the knowledge feels scary because they need a guide like you to help them navigate that very sticky, like you said, sticky road. I remember the first time I made noodles, homemade fresh noodles, and my fingers were all stuck to the dough. And I just thought, this is
Uh-huh.
ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. And then someone taught me, how to do it properly. And I was like, oh, wow, I can create this really yummy, amazing meal without destroying it with the stick. I think people feel like when they get into the mess, you used the word mess, the messiness of the emotions, that they'll never get out of it. And I've heard people say, now is not the time for me to feel these feelings. Now isn't the time because I'm afraid I'll fall apart. And I'm like, do it. Fall apart.
Yeah.
Break apart into a million pieces because you don't need
Yeah.
any of that stuff that you think's holding you together. They're holding a version of you together that no longer is serving you. Yeah, maybe it did when you were 7 or 12 or 15 or 30. I don't know when it was serving you, but I know it's not serving you now.
Yeah. No, you're not. You're absolutely right. And I think so many people have spent so much time in survival mode that they don't even realize. And when you say that about like I don't have time to fall apart right now, well, when is a good time? Because if you realized that falling apart was going to be the catalyst or the first day of the best day of your life or the best, life that you could possibly live, wouldn't you want to get to it? I look at it now and I'm like, yeah, get into it. Are you falling apart? Excellent. Then you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Because once you hit the rock bottom or you figure out, okay, I need better, I want better for my life, it just goes up from there. And is it messy and is it hard to deal with stuff? Sure. But life right now is hard. It's just different. So many people get twisted up in the comparison game where they don't realize that it's like, working out and being fit hard? Yes. Is being fat hard? Yes. Is being poor hard? Yes. Is working hard to have money and success hard? Yes. You choose your hard. You get to pick whichever one it is that you want. And for me, it's like get into the mess of what your emotions are and figure that stuff out because it's the life on the other side of that as you start navigating that is such a beautiful thing. You can't even get your head around how cool it is, how different it is from just numbing and living in this hamster wheel. We're not meant to live life that way.
No, you're 100% right. And one of the things that I tell people, and I'll give you the weight loss metaphor, is that people want a formula. It could be a GLP-1 or it could be I will only eat keto or what, it doesn't matter what their formula is that they come and I say, you want to know what the best formula is? It's to fall in love with eating things that honor your body. If you're not
Yeah.
falling in love with what you're eating or falling in love with the workout, but you're just begrudgingly showing up for it each and every day, it's absolutely not sustainable. So you'll never be successful. And it's kind of a mic drop moment when I say, how can you love a salad over deep fried chicken strips? How can you choose to love that? And they really don't know the answer. They don't know how to fall in love with what is healthy for them, including in relationships. Well, there's just no chemistry with the people that are really nice to me, that honor me, that treat me well. I get that because some of the absolute most amazing sex is with a dysfunctional person that is going to just trigger you in every which way and you just got to have it, right? It's like the donut or the cocktail that you just want to have because it's so juicy and it's so exciting. Is it sustainable? It's not. It will burn you out. It doesn't put you on the path that you're meant to be on. And so I think we really misunderstand what it feels like to be healthy. So it's not heavy lifting. It's not like some restricted diet, right? That's not what being healthy is. Because when you're healthy, you can have whatever you want in moderation and you actually won't crave it. I tell people, like, if you look at the emotional link to drugs, there's certain things that you absolutely will not crave once you cure that emotional link. You just will not crave it anymore. And
Yeah.
alcohol is one of those. Once you allow yourself to feel those feelings, you can have a drink. And then I remember that being the biggest kind of aha moment for me is I used to tease way back in my younger years, "Why would anyone have 1 drink? That's ridiculous. If you can't have 2, what's the point?" type deal, right? What's the point? You're not
Yeah.
even gonna have the sensation that you're looking for. But the truth is, when you start appreciating feeling the feelings and you're getting off on that, feeling the feelings, you don't wanna numb that. It's like having a life where you're wearing 50 condoms. Who wants to live their life wearing 50 condoms? I don't.
Yeah.
I wanna raw dog it. I wanna go out there and feel absolutely everything that's coming my way. And the only way to do
Yes.
that is to get rid of the things that are inebriating you. And that's part of the reason the name of my business is called Soul Whiskey. Is it's like you don't
Yeah.
actually need the whiskey. You need to get rid of all of the substances that cause you to not actually get off on life.
I really, really, really love the rubber analogy, Tiffany. I gotta tell you, like that's I'm gonna borrow that one if you don't mind. That's incredible because that's exactly what it is. And I'm raw dogging the hell out of life right now and have been for, the last several years of being on this journey. Highly, highly, highly recommend. And was it hard? Yep. But that's part of what my mission is now is I just do this at full volume because I think everyone else needs to see as well. It's not that scary. I have this thing that I do. I don't know if you ever watched Scooby Doo when you were younger, but they're out looking for the bad guy, right? And they find this guy in the mask and they're chasing him and it's like this whole thing. And they get to him finally at the end and they pull his mask off and they're like, "Mr. Smith." It's just like the neighbor being a ding dong, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what everyone's so scared of. We're so scared of that monster under the bed. It's just Mr. Smith. It's like it's not that scary. But if you live in fear and you keep building up all of these things into things that you're afraid of and you don't touch, it's like it's not that scary. The worst thing that you could do is stay in fear and not do anything. So do the thing, say the thing, pull the yarn, figure yourself out, figure out how to get in touch with yourself, figure out how to get rid of the things get rid of the rubbers in your life. Okay, get rid of
Well,
a few of the rubbers in your life.
I like that metaphor only because many of us can appreciate the lack of sensation that brings, and I feel like one of the gifts that I bring to humanity is visceral descriptions of what we're doing emotionally that people can like wake up and say, "Oh my gosh, that is what I'm doing." Because when I notice that I'm at a restaurant and, normally you can have a connect with people, even if it's at a stoplight, but it's rare these days because people are staring at their phones at a stoplight, right? So you don't even have that moment of like, "How you doing?" Like there's these fun little
Yeah.
moments that you have. And I find that, at restaurants, you see the family. I've actually had tears spring up before because I'm not afraid to go out alone. So I've gone out alone many times because I connect with people that are on my frequency and they see
Mm-hmm.
me and I see them. But I will see families, mom, dad, 2 kids, and the mom and dad are on the phones and both kids are on the iPads or the tablets or whatever it is they've got. And I sit there and I watch it and I see that nobody's talking and nobody's communicating. And I'm just so curious how this generation that's being raised now in that way that you had described with some form of distraction is going to be able to shake someone's hand, look them in the eye, or have the conversation that we're having right now where we're 100% present. We're able
Mm-hmm.
to dialogue back and forth and kind of fill into each other so there's a flow to it. These people don't have the flow. And it's so sad for me because a lot of them are children. And I think what's going to happen in 20 years? They have a hard time finding real life mates, that really
Mm-hmm.
connect with them on a deep level. And there's also a huge like a divide because people like you and I would raise our kids in one way. And then there's other people that are very busy. I'll give them that. They're very busy and this is a babysitter and they also maybe don't have the tools on how to discipline their kids. I mean, I remember my kids being young we'd go to a birthday party at a, pizza place, and one of them would act up for whatever reason, they're kids, and I would say, "We're gonna go to the car," and they called my bluff on it because they thought, "Well, mommy wants to hang out with all her mom friends, right?" And I was like,
Mhm.
"No, no, we're gonna leave your brother. He's gonna have a good time. Here's a pile of quarters. Go play the games with all the friends, and we're gonna go to the car." And I would sacrifice, and I would go to the car until it was over. I don't see a lot of healthy parenting going on right now. I see kids throwing fits on planes. Nobody's actually stepping up to that uncomfortable situation that says, I'm going to be there with them. I'm going to
Yeah.
hold them through this experience that they're having. We're not going to try to numb it because that numbing is starting right out of the womb. You see it with people that
Yes.
the baby's crying and everyone's so uncomfortable they don't know what to do. Babies cry, and so do humans and full grown men and women, or we should.
Mhm.
It's a release of
Yeah.
emotion. So I don't know. Where do you see us going in the future as far as a culture, and what can we do from our perspective where we're at right now for some of this younger generation to, in essence, get that alarm clock going so that they wake up to the beauty of stepping into their own life, maybe for the first time, and looking around and seeing that they're part of it without always having so much self-criticism. You walk into a party and you're not even looking to see who you want to talk to. You're wondering who wants to talk to you. Do I look okay? Do I fit in? I never do that. I interview everybody that I talk to see if I want them to be part of my tribe.
Yeah. Well, I think we haven't raised our kiddos with the confidence, right? We've taken things away from them because we want it to be easy for them. And by doing that, we're not allowing them to build their own confidence, right? If you think about when you were growing up, how do you build confidence? By doing things. You don't get confidence before doing things, but as parents, we've taken things away because we want it to be easy for our kids. We don't have the stomach to watch them struggle. But what we need to do is be able to allow them to struggle, and that makes you as a parent super uncomfortable to watch that. I know because I've done both sides of it of let me rescue you so that you don't have to feel anything or that you don't have to do this hard thing. I'll take care of it for you. But by doing that, you're robbing your children of being able to build their own confidence.
That's
So then when
so
you're talking about
true.
having these young kiddos that don't, it is, right? I mean, think about that. It's like when we were younger, it was go out, do whatever you want. You didn't have a leash on you. You didn't have phones. You just got to go figure things out. And that was how you build your confidence. And you're right. When you say I walk into a party and I see who do I want to talk to, it is flipped now of like, who would want to talk to me? Oh my God. We really need to start younger and have an impact with these kiddos, which for me, I find myself at this place now where that is literally my mission. I'm going to write this book to a middle school perspective because I have nieces and nephews that are in that younger generation who it just rips my heart out. They're being raised by my brother and his wife who are incredible people and do the discipline and are plugged in and are plugged into the gross feelings of, okay, let's talk that through. Let's process that. Let me hold space for you. But a lot of people don't because they are uncomfortable with the baby crying or with the whatever. We're so from this culture where everyone's so uncomfortable with life. I mean, it's just with life. That's life when these things happen. Everyone's so uncomfortable, but it's like lean into that. We're supposed to do the uncomfortable
Because
things,
it's so
Everything isn't meant to be
sexy.
easy. It is. I live in discomfort all day, every
Yeah.
day. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do today? Who knows what could happen? But it is everything that is the discomfort. And I have come to this place where I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the pain. I'm grateful for the messed up things that have happened in my life because that's where I have built my biggest confidences. And it's where I see the most growth. But if we're teaching our kiddos every time something makes you feel uncomfortable, pull away from it, right? Get yourself a pill that's going to fix that, or get yourself a numb of choice that's going to make it so that you don't have to feel that. It's just another layer of a rubber that you're not going to feel life with. Everyone's walking around in airplane mode. And if you realize that analogy of think about your phone in airplane mode and how limited the features are. When you're on an airplane, you're completely losing your mind because all you can do is these few things, whatever the few things on your phone are. Take your life out of airplane mode and do some main character shit and see what happens, right? Feel
Yes.
the feels. Get your hands up on the roller coaster, right? This life is amazing. We're not meant to just live the same mediocre day on repeat. in this hamster wheel while we triage our shitty lives. It's like, you guys, there's so much more out there, but you do have to be willing to get off the porch. You do have to be willing to look and say, this makes me uncomfortable. Why? You do have to be able to honor yourself above other people instead of like, I don't want to make the other person uncomfortable. And so I'm going to like totally be uncomfortable in my own skin and my own body so that someone else isn't uncomfortable. Stop it. Like these are just basic things. And I realize that we've been conditioned and programmed to be quiet and not feel the feels and stay small and all of this stuff. And it's like, I'm calling BS. I found the other direction is way better. Let's go this way.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. And I think that part of the message to some of the parents out there is, I remember my son was probably, I want to say 7, and he left his ski coat at the ski hill because it happened to be a sunny day and he'd just thrown it off somewhere in the lodge. And it's an expensive coat, right? It's like a $400 coat. So I said, you need to call the ski hill and find out if it's in the lost and found. And his face turned pale white because he'd never done
Mhm.
something like that, and he was very young, and I said, "I'll get you the phone number, and I'll sit right next to you so that I can help you if you need a lifeline." And he called, and
Mhm.
I had him introduce himself. "Hi, I'm, whatever." And I left my ski coat there, and I said, "Make sure you give him the day and the time and where it's at." And they said, "Oh my gosh, yes, we have it here. Come on down and pick it up." That's one example, right? I saw one just this week. On Facebook, there was a woman, so I'm assuming she's about my age because her kids are about my age, whose son was gonna be a senior in college. So do the math on this. He's gonna be a senior in college. He's probably 20, 21-ish age. And she said, "I'm looking for a place for him to live with roommates." And I thought to myself, "Mama, can you not guide your son to do this so he sees how it's done?" Because I could just sense energetically she's doing it all, every single thing for him.
Yeah.
And here's this boy that's going to go out into the world and not know how to rent a place for himself or interview the tenants that he would be sharing space with. He has none of those skill set. And I'll bet you the person you'd be interviewing with is mom.
Yeah. Right.
Mom. That is, like, so far from helping our kids figure out how to navigate the land, and that is our role, is to help these kids learn how to feel the uncomfortable feelings because circling back to something you said, you have to do it to gain confidence. You have to do it. Well, part of doing it is feeling so uncomfortable and maybe failing a few times. Maybe, I remember telling my kids, you need to give your name when you call someone. "Hello, this is so and so." Because they would forget
Yeah.
because, you're nervous and you forget those things. And that's why the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. And our job for ourselves, not even just as parents, is to say, okay, I'm going to do it despite the discomfort. And I know I will learn something from this experience. And so if you get off on what am I going to learn through the failure? What will be
Yeah.
revealed to me through the failure? Even if that is, I'm going out for happy hour and I'm not going to drink anything tonight. And then you quote unquote fail, the peer pressure becomes too much or the emotions are too much and you feel uncomfortable and you say, I'm just going to have a shot of tequila or 3 or whatever it is. You have learned something in that moment and you will be better next time. So having that intention of gathering data through the discomfort, whether that means you succeeded because you learn there's a lot of data through success too. This is what I did right. I was able to have a drink before I went in that I knew I was going to order and I felt confident ordering it. And I had to learn how to order it in a fancy glass. Can you please, for the love of God, give me a fancy glass like everyone else has, not the plastic 16-ounce, whatever Pizza Hut looking cup. Please give me a fancy glass. I want something amazing so that I feel great with my drink. I had to learn that through trial and error because I didn't realize I was being punished for having a non-alcoholic drink. That's what it is. You're at the kid table.
It's you're not wrong, and you have to get comfortable with being at the kid table because
Yeah.
it's like at the end of the day, I'm much happier. But you're right; they do make it difficult. Or people who are like, "Why don't you drink?" I'm like, "Can we please, as a society, stop normalizing that question? Why do you drink? It's fucking poison. Excuse my language. It's
Yeah.
poison.
Yeah.
Like, and again, no judgment. I spent decades drinking my fair share. I ran all the way out of alcohol from what was allocated to me in this lifetime. But it doesn't matter. Like, why are we normalizing normalizing, why don't you drink? I don't know, because I have goals and I want my best possible life. And spending Saturday mornings hungover doesn't do that for me, you know?
Yeah, I
Like,
wanna feel good every single day when I wake up, and, I have clients that say, "Tiff, every morning of my life when I get in the shower, I say, 'Today's the day I'm not gonna have a drink. Today's the day.'" And they don't consider themselves alcoholics. They just consider themselves casual drinkers, but when they wake up, they feel it. They feel a little foggy and maybe a little puffy, and they just don't feel like their best selves, and they said, the introspective time comes in the shower, and they make a vow to themselves that today's going to be the day they're not going to do it. And for some reason it takes something major for them to go through that discomfort you're talking about when the daytime or hour arrives, when the emotions have built up throughout the day. I mean, maybe in the morning you get a hard reset, so you feel somewhat okay in the morning, and then the emotions come back to you, right? Because the numbing is wore off, and you start feeling them, and you say, "Should I take a pill?" It's kind of like if you have an injury, like let's say an ankle injury, and you've been taking Advil, a high dose of Advil every 3 to 6 hours. And then there becomes a point when you say, "I'm just gonna let myself feel this because I think it's important to feel the pain." And one of the things that I teach people as well is that pain's there for a reason with your ankle. It's so you don't hurt it again and you don't use it again. It's there for a reason. And so is the swelling. News flash. That swelling isn't supposed to disappear. It's there for a reason because it's like God's little insulation boot around your ankle so that you can't move it, so that you can't walk on it. And they just they look at me sideways like, "Huh?" Like no one's ever explained this to them because it's certainly not your Western medicine protocol, right? Because they want to get rid of symptoms fast. That's what we do. And then we create a whole new set of symptoms with the pill. Whatever the pill is, creates a whole new set of symptoms. And I am here on this planet to create something that is genuine healing as opposed to that pill. And I think you are too. That's what I sense about you is that you're here to help people get right to it and say, "Oh, you have pain? Oh, you have swelling? Oh, you have lack of
yeah,
movement? Oh, you have discomfort? Oh, well, let's just talk about that instead of trying to fix it. Let's just talk about it
yeah.
because that's where it starts. It's the conversation." Imagine it. I was this close to reaching out to that mom on Facebook, which I don't want to be the Karen, right? I don't want to do that. But I was that close to reaching out to her and just giving her a little piece of my mind, saying, "Hey, why don't you give your son a chance? Guide him from afar. You can be the
Yeah.
project manager. That's totally fine, especially if he's never done it before and you want to make it a little bit easier for him. But give him a chance. Like, don't you remember teaching your kids to cook and they'd make a huge mess and you didn't say a word about it? You just let them do the thing and mix up the eggs and do the pancakes and it was fine. They failed a bunch until they succeeded. And now they feel confident in making a meal for themselves, their friends, me, whoever it is, and that's how it is for them and for us because no matter where you're at in the starting position, I've met 60-year-olds that are just starting out with this as far as love, as far as connection, as far as sex. I mean, sober sex is a real thing.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You took it from like, for me, drunk a lot, drunk all the time kind of thing to sober sex was a big thing for getting, getting comfortable with that, getting vulnerable. God, talk about getting naked. Um, but looking at it from this side of it, I can't imagine going back, right? Life without that the numb, whatever the numb is, that you're numbing over everything. You just have like this blanket numb over your entire life. God, it's so much better without it.
Well, we stick to our metaphor. So you've spent your whole life using 50 condoms, but you finally had the experience of just having that blissed out skin to skin contact. Who would ever make the decision to put 50 of those bad boys back on or even one?
Yeah. Yeah, not me, not me. And it's funny because there's sometimes in patterns, as you know, that things will start to creep back in a little bit, but you catch yourself pretty quickly of like, no, 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 no. I'm not numbing this out. Like I need to feel this. I can handle this. I have the tools to be able to do this. I want to be in touch with my body. I want to be in tune so that I'm feeling all of the feels and can really lean into that. I know that that seems scary to so many people, but God, get curious about yourself. Start doing your own self-exploration journey. you figure out so many different things that just it blows my doors off every single day. And I look at my tribe and I ask my kiddos or my husband or my friends, they wouldn't take the old version of me back compared to this version if you paid them, you know? And that just took me figuring myself out, getting selfish with myself of like what is this bringing up for me, spending time with me, figuring me out. That's it, right? That's the game to get the rubbers off and start raw dogging it. And I'm telling you, you're absolutely right. What a great metaphor, because it's that different. It's that different, and it's amazing.
Okay, so for those that are listening right now and they say, I hear everything that Anne is saying. I hear everything Anne and Tiff is saying, and kind of cerebrally, I get it. What are the first steps to take for someone like me that's numbed myself out my whole life? Maybe they don't even have one numbing mechanism. Maybe they have multiples. Maybe they're in dramatic
Mhm.
relationships because that's one way of numbing. You just find drama all the time. Maybe they use
Mhm.
drugs or alcohol. Maybe they use TV, right? They're constantly watching some dramatic reality show. What would you advise them would be some of the first steps or a first step in learning to get comfortable with something that they didn't even know was there? Because a lot of people don't even know it's there. They've become so accustomed to it that it is their operating system. So, what would you suggest for just some random person listening who says, "I hear these ladies talking, but I don't even know where to begin. Am I supposed to begin by not having alcohol? Is that where I begin?"
Yeah.
It's very hard, and I'd like them to have something tangible to walk away from that will help them
Yeah.
today.
I would suggest just finding a stillness, like finding a quiet for a moment, whether that's driving to work without any music on, right? Or anything that's on, or sitting down with a journal and nothing else besides your thoughts. Go sit outside somewhere for a few minutes. It will make your body scream. I guarantee you it will make your body scream because we're so used to numbing it. But just be in that stillness with yourself for a second, and then just see what comes up. It will tell you, like, whether you want to be journaling something, whether you want to be reading something, like start that self exploration just by getting quiet and seeing where that leads.
I love
I
this.
think yeah, I think doing that is really savage. I think doing a gratitude journal practice is really important, and that's something that can be very, very easy. I think a lot of people come from an excuses mentality and a victim mentality just because that's what we've been conditioned with and programmed with. Again, no judging. That's just how it is, but there's no power in victimhood. So if you can say, I'm going to just take whatever 5 minutes, maybe that's just 5 minutes in the back of your closet hiding from the kiddos without your phone. Go do that and just see what comes up. Generally speaking, you'll probably cry because that's just you've just been holding and numbing and stuffing stuff down for so long that it just wants out. And having that quiet moment where it can catch up for a second is going to do that. And then figure out what either a book that will kind of guide you, a podcast that you can listen to. Maybe you're already into therapy. Maybe you can go do a sound bath or something where you're just not plugged in. I think the unplugging is really important. I have a place that's out in nature by these trees that I call the legends, and I'll just take a blanket and go sit there. And sometimes I just lay on the grass and look up at the leaves as they're in the wind or whatever. Was it uncomfortable at first? Absolutely. Now my body just craves it. We're not meant to be so connected all the time and so plugged into all of these things that we're just numbing out our feelings. Just get still and see what comes up. Your body knows, your gut knows. You just need to reacquaint yourself with who you are.
This is so fantastic, and I would love to share a quick story about someone who was doing yoga, and they said, "This is my way of, recalibrating," and I said, "Well, what kind of yoga is it?" "Power yoga," and I said, "Okay, you're doing power yoga." I said, "How is the shavasana for you?" And she goes, "Oh, I don't stay for that. I wave to the instructor because 'cause we're good friends, because she would do yoga, like, 5 days a week, and she goes, "I'd wave, and I'd go goodbye," and I go, "Okay, so here's the homework for the week. I would like you to explore the Shavasana, regardless of how uncomfortable it is." And she goes, "I don't really have time for that because I'm there for the workout and the Shavasana is like nothing." And I said, "Okay, but this is the homework. I'd like you to just allow yourself to relax and melt into the mat and listen to whatever comes up for you." So she says, "Okay." Now I'm gonna fast forward. Of course, you know everything that happened in between. It was very uncomfortable, and at first she could only make it a minute, and then she could make it 2, and she happened to be going to a great studio. Anyway, at the end of all of it, she said, "Tiff, you're never gonna believe." She goes, "Now I cut my class short and I just lay on the mat while everyone else is doing power yoga, and I go straight to Shavasana because 'cause I've realized that the bang for my buck is in Shavasana, not in the workout," and
Yes.
I just about cried when I heard this. I was like, "Yes, you're getting it," because for those of you listening that are part of this power yoga group or the heavy workout group and you don't allow yourself to absorb the work that you've done in life, because 'cause you're doing work all the time, that's what you're doing, just you deserve an award for waking up each and every day, but to absorb that work is part of what you just suggested. It's spending 5 minutes grounding, put your feet in the earth, it's listening to the wind in the trees, like, the symphony of nature is incredible. Or just, when you're driving and see what comes up for you, without the music, what's coming up for you, and watch it, and don't try to capture it. They're like birds. You don't wanna take a wild bird and capture it in a cage. That's what these emotions are like. Just watch it without being so attached to it that you feel like you have to cage it and go, "Oh my gosh, I must work on this," because there's that type of person too that wants to
Yeah.
capture each one of these.
Yeah, and it isn't. It's just watching what comes up and being curious about it, not coming from a place of judgment, just come from a place of curiosity. Whatever your feelings, whatever your thoughts are, just allow them to flow, allow them to come up. Because if you've spent so much time pushing down and numbing on top of it, it's going to feel really weird when you start allowing it to come up, but it's not meant to stay in your body. Emotions are meant to flow through you. Emotions are meant to flow. If you don't process them, it isn't like they just go away. If you had a big grief event and you didn't do anything to process that grief, it still lives inside of you and you're bleeding in the dark and you don't even realize it. So when people get to this place where they're like, I don't feel disconnected or I don't feel connected to myself or I don't even know who I am or like any of these kind of things, it's like we've spent so much time just stuffing down emotions, not processing them, not letting them go through. They stay stuck. And to me, I think that's what turns into cancers, disease, all of the things, because it's like you never let it, you never released it, you never allowed yourself the opportunity to process it. Where did you think that went? And again, no judgment. I spent decades of my life doing that, but now I'm on the other side of that, which is a everyday process, but I'm on the other side of the understanding and it's amazing. I mean, words don't even begin to explain how cool my life is, from before to now. It's excellent because in this book, I give stories and tell about a lot of the different things that I've gone through to understand what boundaries are, for example. Or there's a chapter titled Fix Your Shit, which is about triggers and that they're yours and not someone else's. I have a great chapter about energy and how to quantify that. So I view energy like Skittles so that you can actually quantify it and decide how you want to spend that. The savage self-awareness. So it's 10 main chapters of just some real basic stuff, but things that I think 90% of people don't plug into because they have a hard time kind of visualizing that or figuring out a way to really be able to implement that into their everyday life. And so it's those things that you'll be able to actually kind of have those aha moments with the way that I explain things where you can go, okay, well, I can do that. And once you start working on yourself just a little bit, you start getting a little bit of traction, you see the results and it makes you want to do more and more and more. So it's just, this book is really kind of a stepping stone. I call it kind of like the missing ladder rung because it's so many people don't know where to start. And I think this book is an excellent place because it just gives you some of the really basic tools that help you start making choices for your life that lead to a life that has purpose that you want to live.
I love that. In my head, the way I'm processing it is it's almost an emotional weight loss book because, when you lose those first few pounds, you're really motivated to do more. And whatever it was you were doing, you say, I'm going to do more. And that is falling in love with the process. And so your book allows people to get those first few emotional pounds off the table so that they have the opportunity to build momentum within. It's like riding a bike and they're pushing and when they read your book they have this opportunity to say, wait a second, I think I can find my balance. And once you find your balance, there's no hill you can't climb. There is nothing you can't do.
I believe that entirely. I think the cheat codes for life are in this book, right? If you buy it and you don't agree with me, send it back. I'll buy it back from you. I literally feel that strongly about what's in this book. I don't feel like I wrote this book. I feel like I channeled this book from the big guy, right? From my big guy. And so I look at this and it's like, it's so freaking powerful. It's so exciting. It's so just all of the things. If you're not a reader, get it on Audible, right? I'll read it to you. It takes a total of 5 hours. You can spend 5 hours in the car on your way to work and back at the end of the day. What do you have to lose, right? It's like there's just so much goodness that you can get out of this, so many good nuggets that you can just start implementing in your life today. And I love the analogy about losing those first few emotional pounds because that's exactly what it is. And it inspires you because you're like, okay, I can do this. I can do this, instead of feeling like completely overwhelmed and overloaded in life. Like, no, you can do this.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today because I just think you are incredible. I love spending time with you. I love the energy that you're sending out, that you're allowing other people to plug into through all the mediums, just through your own podcast, through joining me on mine, through your book, through everything that you're doing right now. So, why don't you let people know where they can find you so they can follow you and just tap into what you're doing at all times?
Sure. So the website for the podcast is letsgetnakedpodcast.com. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts. I also have a website, annekarber.com. You can get the book on Amazon or on either of the websites that I just mentioned, and we'd love to connect. So, yeah,
Fantastic. Well, until we meet again,
awesome. Thank you, Tiffany.
thanks, Anne.